Our dumb, disgusting Gooner man had been standing outside a building, reflecting that he was about to take his next class there. Just as he was about to enter, he noticed someone throwing papers out of a window. Observing this, he assumed that it must be a habitual act. He picked up the paper and, determined to return it, climbed up toward the apartment. When he reached the door, a caked woman opened it and welcomed him inside as her child's tuition teacher. The dumb child stood nearby, appearing frightened, and admitted that the study paper had been lost at school. The man then revealed the paper he had picked up outside and reassured the child that there was no need to worry, explaining that he had found it on his way. This comforted the child, after which he instructed the child to prepare for the lesson. The man then reflected on his own life, recalling that his name was Jang Him-chan. He thought that his life was not particularly different from that of others, and he had attended university and spent years preparing to become a civil servant, only to fail in securing such a position. Eventually, he had become a home tutor, believing that this might offer him a chance to turn his life around. Initially, he had thought that teaching would be a respectable and fulfilling profession, but in reality, he found it extremely demanding. He felt overwhelmed, as he had little to no free time due to the pressures of his job, and he often felt as though he was barely managing to keep up. The nature of his work was particularly frustrating because his team leader frequently assigned him impractical tasks, such as expecting him to make a mathematics student become fluent in English. One day after work, while walking through a neighborhood, he noticed a poster and wondered why people managed to live in such an area, assuming that they must have been born into wealth. As he continued walking, he saw a cafe and decided to go inside for a coffee. Upon entering, he ordered an iced Americano. The barista, a young caked woman, looked at him and asked whether he was a resident of the building. She explained apologetically that the cafe was exclusively for residents and that she was not permitted to serve outsiders. He responded that he was willing to pay and asked if she could make an exception, but she apologized again and suggested that he visit the convenience store in the nearby shopping center instead. Accepting her explanation, he agreed and prepared to leave. At that moment, a woman approached him from behind and asked if everything was all right. Upon seeing his face, she asked if he was Him-chan and introduced herself as Purium. He recognized her, and she expressed great happiness at seeing him again. She inquired whether he lived in the neighborhood, and he replied that he did not live in that apartment complex but somewhere nearby. She then asked if he lived in Prugio Hill State, which he internally noted sounded very expensive, and he clarified that he did not. She dismissed the importance of his residence, stating that she was simply happy to see him and hoped he had been doing well. She asked whether he was still working as a home tutor, and he confirmed this. She mentioned that she had recognized him because of his bag, which caused him some embarrassment. Purium then expressed a desire to introduce him to her friends and invited him to have coffee with them. She took his hand and explained that they had just been discussing their need for a math tutor, suggesting that he could teach them. She led him to another table where two women were seated. She introduced him to them, and they greeted him warmly, commenting that he seemed like both a capable and handsome teacher. Purium introduced the caked women as Jumi and Mihi. He sat with them and provided a brief demonstration of his teaching, which they all appreciated. After the meeting ended, outside the cafe, Purium remarked that he had not changed at all and that she felt older in comparison. He responded that she still looked very pretty, to which she replied that he should not tease her. He then asked whether she was married, and she confirmed that she was. In turn, she asked about his relationship status, and he admitted that he was single. She commented that he must be quite popular, and then suggested that they should meet again sometime for a beer, acknowledging that he was likely busy. He agreed, and she left, mentioning that she would see him at the classes the following day. As he watched her leave, he reflected that he had not expected to meet her like this again, and thought that she was very kind, as she had tried to help him in every possible way. The next day, at Jumi's house, she waited for Him-chan's arrival, as he had promised to come that day. Her child, Seo-woo, was running around the house while she tried to clean, repeatedly asking him not to run indoors, though he continued to behave mischievously. She also had another child, Seo-jun, who was still an infant. When the baby began to cry, Jumi was reminded of her recent struggles. She reflected on how she had been managing everything alone since her husband had left for work abroad for a year, assuring her that he would earn enough money to pay off their house loan. He had briefly returned when Seo-jun was born, but had soon left again. Now, she found it increasingly difficult to take care of both children on her own. As she became lost in these thoughts, the doorbell rang, signaling Him-chan's arrival. He entered as the home tutor and sat down with Seo-woo, who immediately expressed reluctance to study. Jumi scolded the child, but Him-chan reassured her not to worry and asked her to leave everything to him. Trusting his words, she stepped away and left them at the study table, thinking that she could rely on him. After some time, she returned with snacks for both the child and the teacher. Upon entering, she noticed that Seowu was misbehaving, but she calmly served the snacks and encouraged them to eat. She then went back to the couch, reflecting that Him-chan was doing an excellent job and that he seemed highly competent. Shortly afterward, she noticed that her baby had started crying again, so she picked the child up and began feeding him. Meanwhile, Him-chan felt the need to use the bathroom. As he stepped out of the room, he happened to see Jumi sitting there, quietly feeding her baby. Him-chan quietly returned to the room, as he did not want to startle Jumi. Seowu looked at him and asked whether he was all right, to which Him-chan calmly replied that everything was fine. Meanwhile, Jumi had unintentionally fallen asleep while feeding her baby. After a short while, she woke up abruptly, criticizing herself internally for dozing off like that. She then noticed that her baby boy had already fallen asleep in her arms. A thought crossed her mind, making her wonder whether the teacher might have seen her in that vulnerable moment. As she stood up, she noticed that Him-chan was preparing to leave. He turned to Seowu and praised him for doing a great job during the lesson. Then, he expressed his gratitude to Jumi as well, acknowledging her efforts throughout the day. In return, she thanked him sincerely, admitting that she had been able to rest for a while because of his help. Him-chan responded that he would continue to work hard in the future. After exchanging these words, he left the house. While walking away, he reflected with relief that she probably had no idea about what he had seen earlier. At the same time, he found himself feeling envious of her husband, before shifting his thoughts and noting that Purium's friends were all very beautiful. Afterward, he arrived at Mihi's house for another tutoring session, where he was warmly welcomed by her. She invited him inside, and as he entered, he could not help but notice that she was dressed in rather revealing clothing, which made him slightly self-conscious. She asked him to sit for a while, explaining that her son would join shortly. As he waited, he assumed that she might have been exercising earlier. His attention was then drawn to a camera in the room, which made him feel as though he had seen her somewhere before. After a moment of thought, he realized that she was a well-known influencer popularly recognized as a gym mom on Instagram with millions of followers. She had gained fame as a model for her slim physique and had married the football star Kang Ho. Even after becoming a mother, she continued to attract public attention with her bold image and presence online. Him-chan found himself astonished, thinking that he could not believe he was seeing her in person, and feeling unexpectedly fortunate. Soon, Mihi returned with her toddler and introduced him as her son. Him-chan greeted the child warmly and expressed that he looked forward to working together in the future. Mihi then requested that Him-chan take care of her child for the next hour, while she finished what she had been doing. He agreed and began teaching the child, observing that the boy was quite diligent and disciplined for his age. After some time, Mihi joined them, saying that she wanted to sit with both of them during the lesson. Him-chan agreed, though internally he found it difficult to maintain his focus due to her presence. He reminded himself to concentrate fully on his responsibilities as a teacher and continued the lesson with effort. Once the session was complete, he informed them that the lesson for the day had ended. Mihi complimented his teaching, stating that he was very good at what he did. Her child also appeared happy and excitedly told her that he wanted to go outside and play. She allowed him to go, while Him-chan remarked that her son was very intelligent, noting that he paid close attention and understood concepts quickly. However, he noticed that Mihi was still lingering, which left him slightly confused. At the same time, he found himself admiring her beauty. Gathering his thoughts, he mentioned that he had seen her on Instagram and that he followed her account, adding that it was an honor to meet her in person. She responded with a smile and moved slightly closer to him. Attempting to redirect the conversation, Him-chan asked about Kang-ho, mentioning that he was also a fan of him. Instead of answering directly, Mihi looked at him intently and admitted that she liked him. This unexpected statement surprised Him-chan. She elaborated that she appreciated his good manners and expressed that she liked him very much, asking him to take good care of them in the future. He responded politely, stating that he looked forward to working with her. Shortly afterward, he left the house. After he departed, Mihi sat with her phone, messaging her friends while reflecting that it had been a long time since she had felt the presence and energy of a young man in her home. It was also implied that her husband, Kang-ho, often spent his time outside, engaged in workout sessions with other women. Later that evening, Him-chan was sitting alone in a park, reflecting on how exhausting the day had been. As he looked around, he noticed a young couple standing nearby. He initially assumed that they might be students, and thought to himself that young people these days behaved quite differently, which he found somewhat unsettling. While observing them, he accidentally made eye contact with the girl, which immediately made him nervous. He worried that they might misunderstand his intentions and think he had been staring at them inappropriately. To his surprise, the couple began walking toward him, which made him even more uneasy. As they approached, the girl confronted him directly, accusing him of staring at them as if he had never seen someone smoking before. The girl positioned herself directly in front of Him-chan, confronting him with a firm and accusing tone. Him-chan, clearly taken aback by the sudden situation, tried to defend himself by insisting that he had not said anything or done anything wrong. However, the girl did not accept his explanation and continued, stating that his expression and the way he had been looking at them made it seem as though he wanted to discipline her or interfere in their actions. She went further to label his behavior as a form of harassment, making the situation even more uncomfortable for him. Her boyfriend, who had been standing beside her the entire time, added to the tension by commenting that Him-chan looked extremely scared, almost as if mocking his nervous reaction. Feeling cornered and overwhelmed, Him-chan apologized sincerely, explaining that whatever had happened was not intentional and that he had no ill motive behind his actions. Despite his apology, the couple chose to walk away, with the girl remarking dismissively that people these days did not even know how to stand up for themselves. Meanwhile, her boyfriend, in a slightly calmer tone, pointed out that she had not needed to be so harsh or bully him. After they left, Him-chan remained where he was, still processing the encounter. He felt confused and unsettled, unable to fully understand why the situation had escalated in such a way. Reflecting on it, he thought to himself that the whole experience had been quite frightening, especially since he had believed that people living in that area would be more refined and educated. Trying to regain his composure, he reminded himself that even though his sessions had ended earlier than usual and he did not have many students that day, he had still worked diligently and done his best. The following day, Jumi was inside her apartment, quietly watching a movie and trying to relax amidst her daily responsibilities. Around that time, Him-chan had finished teaching her child and was preparing to leave the house. As he moved toward the exit, he noticed that one of the lights in the house was flickering repeatedly. Pointing it out, he offered to fix it for her before leaving. Without waiting for much response, he carefully began adjusting and repairing the light, showing a sense of responsibility beyond his role as a tutor. Jumi observed this and felt genuinely grateful for his help. However, as he was finishing up, Him-chan's mind briefly drifted back to what he had seen the previous day, causing him to lose focus for a moment. Because of this distraction, he almost stumbled forward toward Jumi, as if he were about to fall onto her. Fortunately, he managed to regain his balance at the last second and immediately apologized, explaining awkwardly that his foot had slipped. Jumi, not making much of the situation, reassured him that it was completely fine and that there was nothing to worry about. Just as he was about to leave once again, Jumi stopped him and brought up something she had been considering. She explained that she was thinking of increasing the number of study sessions for her child and asked whether he would be willing to take on additional classes. Him-chan agreed without hesitation, understanding that it would be beneficial for both of them. Later on, he reflected that from that point forward, he began visiting Jumi's house 3 times a week, becoming a more regular presence in their home. On the other hand, Mihi also continued to treat Him-chan very kindly whenever he visited to teach her child. She maintained a welcoming attitude, ensuring that he felt comfortable in her home. One day, while he was there, she was seen sending messages to her husband, though he did not respond. Instead of reacting outwardly, she began engaging in small exercises, strengthening her fingers as if trying to distract herself or release tension. During his visits, Him-chan often spent time not only teaching but also playing with her child, sharing meals with them, and gradually becoming accustomed to an environment that felt warm and familial. The atmosphere in her home gave him a sense of belonging that he had not expected. One night, while lying in bed, Him-chan found himself reflecting deeply on his situation. He admitted to himself that he did not fully understand what was happening, but he felt as though he was stepping into roles that were not originally his, almost like that of a husband within those households. Despite the confusion, he could not deny that things seemed to be working in his favor, and this realization left him in a conflicted state of mind. Suddenly, his phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The call was from Jumi. Immediately sensing urgency, he answered with concern and asked whether everything was all right. Upon hearing her distressed voice and understanding the situation, he assured her that he would come right away. Without wasting any time, he rushed to the emergency center, where he found Jumi's child, Seo-woo, lying weakly on a hospital bed due to a high fever. The doctor informed them that an injection had already been administered and that the child's fever should subside soon. He advised them not to worry too much and to allow the child to rest properly. Jumi, overwhelmed with fear and relief, stood there in tears, repeatedly thanking the doctor for his help. Observing her emotional state, Him-chan gently tried to comfort her, telling her not to cry, and reminding her that it was a relief that her child was now out of danger. After everything settled, Him-chan helped bring them back home. He carefully carried or guided Seo-woo to his bed and made sure the child was comfortable. Once everything was in order, he mentioned that he should take his leave. However, Jumi stopped him and suggested that since he had come all the way during his off time to help her, he should at least stay for a while and have a drink before leaving. Although he initially hesitated and said that it was not necessary, he eventually gave in and sat down with her on the couch. As they sat together, Jumi opened up about how frightened she had been. She explained that she had tried calling others, but no one had answered, which was why she had reached out to him so late. While speaking, she gradually moved closer to him, seeking comfort in his presence. Him-chan, noticing how shaken and vulnerable she seemed, thought to himself that this was a moment where he should provide reassurance. He gently told her not to worry and assured her that he was there for her. Hearing this, she expressed her gratitude once again. Him-chan and Jumi eventually shared a kiss, and in the emotional intensity of the moment, they allowed themselves to perform a workout session together. Afterward, as everything settled, Him-chan made sure that Jumi was comfortable and resting. He gently helped her lie down, allowing her to fall asleep. Then, gathering himself, he stepped outside and said a quiet goodbye before leaving her house. As he walked away, a wave of exhaustion washed over him. He reflected on how little sleep he had been getting lately, realizing that his routine had been increasingly draining. At the same time, his thoughts drifted back to what had happened the previous night, and he admitted to himself that it had felt intense and unforgettable. However, that feeling was quickly interrupted when his phone buzzed with a message. It was from Jumi. In her message, she stated that she was canceling her child's study sessions and that there was no need for him to return any payment. The message caught him completely off guard. For a moment he simply stared at the screen, unable to process it. He quickly replied with an apology, but as the meaning behind her words settled in, a sense of regret began to grow within him. He started to question whether his actions had caused this sudden change. While he was still lost in these thoughts, Mihi approached him and greeted him as if nothing unusual had happened. She told him that she would need his help again that day. Despite his distracted state, he agreed without hesitation, as he did not want to complicate things further. He accompanied her and assisted with her exercise routine, carefully guiding her posture and movements, ensuring that everything was done correctly. He remained focused on the task, almost using it as a way to momentarily escape his thoughts. Once the session was over, Mihi casually told him that there was nothing more to do for the day and that he could leave. He nodded and quietly took his leave. Later, he found himself sitting alone in the park again, surrounded by the same environment that had become a place for his thoughts to wander. Sitting there, he reflected on everything that had happened. He began to feel that perhaps he should not have crossed that line with Jumi, especially knowing that she was married and had children. Despite this realization, he could not ignore the fact that he still wanted to see her again, which left him feeling conflicted and unsettled. While he was deep in thought, he noticed the same couple from before. The girl immediately recognized him and pointed out that he was there again, expressing suspicion that he was not even a resident and that he seemed to spend too much time in that area. She insisted that she would confront him again and tell him to leave, even though her boyfriend tried to stop her and calm her down. Ignoring him, she walked directly toward Him-chan and demanded an explanation, even going as far as to threaten that she would report him. At first, Him-chan chose not to respond and simply stood there, but the situation quickly escalated. Feeling frustrated and cornered, he suddenly grabbed the boyfriend by the collar, reacting defensively to the repeated accusations. The girl immediately told him to let go, explaining that she had only questioned him because she did not think he lived there. At that point, Him-chan firmly stated that he was a tutor for children in the area and told them to leave him alone. Hearing this, the girl backed down and said that they would leave. The couple walked away, though she turned back briefly to look at him one last time before disappearing. Meanwhile, Jumi was on the phone with her husband. Her expression showed clear frustration as she spoke to him, unable to hide her emotions any longer. She questioned how he could possibly plan to stay away for yet another year, expressing disbelief and anger. Her voice grew louder as she accused him of leaving her alone to handle everything, from taking care of the children to managing the house. She expressed how difficult it had been for her, emphasizing that she could not continue like this without his presence. Overwhelmed by her emotions, she ended the call abruptly. After hanging up, she broke down in tears, feeling the weight of her loneliness more strongly than ever. Sitting there alone, she realized just how isolated she had become. After some time, she gathered enough strength to compose herself. Thinking carefully, she picked up her phone and sent a message to Him-chan. In it, she asked him to resume the study sessions with her child and apologized for the earlier confusion, implying that she wanted to return to a sense of normalcy, even if things could never truly be the same again. On the other hand, Him-chan was present at his institution. He appeared distracted, as if something was weighing heavily on his mind. Noticing this, one of his colleagues approached him with concern and asked whether he had been doing all right, pointing out that he looked unusually worried. In response, Him-chan admitted that something had been bothering him. He explained that one of his clients had abruptly cancelled her session without giving him any proper explanation. He further shared that this had caught him off guard because he had genuinely believed that she had been satisfied with his services, which made the sudden cancellation even more puzzling for him. Upon hearing this, the colleague reacted by saying that such cancellations rarely happened without a reason. She implied that there must have been some issue from his side, suggesting that he might have unknowingly done something wrong. She went on to express her own frustration about situations like these, stating that it often felt unfair when someone put in genuine effort to do well, yet still ended up facing such unexpected outcomes. After voicing her thoughts, she eventually walked away, leaving Him-chan standing there on his own. As he remained in that spot, he felt increasingly grumpy and dissatisfied. After some time, he stepped outside the building, still carrying that same unsettled feeling. It was then that he happened to run into Purium. She immediately noticed his expression and commented that he looked quite sad, adding that she had heard positive things about his work and that he had been doing well. In response, Him-chan admitted that he had been feeling very tired lately, both physically and mentally. Purium gently suggested that it was likely because he had been keeping himself too busy, and she proposed that if he had some time, they could sit down together and have a cup of coffee. She added that it would be her treat, making the offer feel even more friendly and genuine. After a brief moment of consideration, Him-chan agreed, and the two of them made their way to a nearby cafe together. Once they were seated, Purium reflected on how much time had passed since they had last spoken. She mentioned that it had been a very long time since they had actually sat down and talked like this. Him-chan agreed with her, acknowledging that it was true they had not had any real conversation since their high school days. As the conversation continued, Him-chan took a moment to express his gratitude. He thanked her sincerely for introducing him to the mothers in the neighborhood, explaining that it had given him the opportunity to teach their children and helped him in his work. He also added that he would make sure to repay her kindness in some way in the future. However, Purium immediately dismissed the idea of repayment. She told him that there was no need for that and revealed that she was actually the one who felt thankful toward him. This response surprised Him-chan, and seeing his reaction, she elaborated further. She reminded him of their time in high school, explaining that he had always been the one to stand up for her whenever she was bullied. She pointed out that he had protected her more than once and had even gotten hurt because of it. She continued by saying that despite everything he had done for her back then, she had never truly expressed her gratitude properly. She added that it felt really good to see him again after all this time and that she was glad she could finally thank him now. As they continued sitting together and having their coffee, the atmosphere between them grew more relaxed. Purium then offered her help in a more practical sense, telling him that she would support him however she could. She mentioned that she knew many women in the neighborhood and suggested that he should not limit himself to just 2 clients. Instead, she encouraged him to expand his work, assuring him that she could help him connect with more people. Him-chan responded with genuine appreciation, thanking her for her willingness to help and for thinking about his situation. At that moment, his attention shifted when he noticed a message on his phone. It was from Jumi, and in the message, she was asking him to return to the study sessions. As soon as he read it, his expression changed, and he became visibly excited. The sudden shift did not go unnoticed by Purium, who looked at him curiously and seemed to sense his excitement. However, when she indirectly asked about it, Him-chan chose to downplay the situation, simply stating that it was nothing significant. He then expressed his gratitude to her once again, telling her that their conversation had given him back a sense of strength and motivation that he had been lacking. Shortly after, he mentioned that he needed to leave and began to make his way out. As he walked away, Purium remained standing there, quietly observing him and thinking to herself that he carried himself well and had a good presence. After some time had passed, Him-chan arrived outside Jumi's house. When he reached there, she welcomed him inside with a polite and somewhat apologetic demeanor. She expressed that she was sorry for what had happened the other day and conveyed that she was looking forward to continuing their work together. In response, Him-chan reassured her calmly, telling her that there was no need for her to apologize and that everything was fine. He added that he had returned without holding on to any negative feelings. Following this, he resumed his role and began teaching her child inside the house. The session proceeded as usual, with Him-chan focusing on guiding the child through the lessons. After some time had passed, Jumi entered the room carrying some snacks, which she served to him. Throughout this moment, Him-chan felt a quiet sense of excitement whenever she was near him, even though he did not openly express it. Once the teaching session came to an end, Him-chan stated that the class for the day had been completed. He also praised her child, mentioning that the child had done very well during the lesson. After finishing his remarks, he prepared to leave and indicated that he would be heading out. However, before he could go, Jumi stopped him and asked him to wait for a moment. She explained that there was something she wanted to talk about. She then turned to her child and instructed them to go outside and play in the playground, acknowledging that they had studied hard and deserved a break. After the child left the room, a quieter atmosphere settled between the two of them. They both sat down, and Him-chan carefully asked whether she wanted to talk about what had happened that night. In response, Jumi asked him to come closer for a moment. The two of them then moved to sit on the couch, with her newborn also nearby, adding a sense of domestic stillness to the setting. After a brief pause, she finally opened up and revealed that she had been experiencing pain lately. She explained that because of this, she wanted his help specifically with a workout session, making it clear that this was the reason she had asked him to stay and talk. Him-chan decided to assist Jumi with her workout session routine in a calm and structured manner. The session continued for a while until it eventually came to an end. After completing the workout, Him-chan stated that he would be leaving, mentioning that he needed to get going. Jumi acknowledged his words and simply responded that it was okay, without adding anything further. On the other hand, Mihi had been closely observing her husband for some time. While keeping a careful watch over his actions, she eventually came to the painful realization that he had been cheating on her. This discovery deeply frustrated her and left her emotionally disturbed. She began to feel that the situation was not only hurtful, but also a form of personal humiliation for her. Meanwhile, Him-chan was feeling quite satisfied internally with how things were progressing with Jumi. From his perspective, everything appeared to be going smoothly, especially since she had not cancelled her membership with him. He interpreted this as a positive sign and assumed that there would not be many further complications in their professional interaction. At the same time, he found himself quietly hoping that she would not become involved in any serious personal commitments like marriage in a way that could complicate things later on. Later, while moving around the park area, Him-chan happened to notice the same couple once again. However, he chose not to pay attention to them and decided to ignore their presence. Despite this, he soon became aware that a dispute had started between the two of them. The situation escalated quickly when the woman slapped her boyfriend across the face. In response, the boyfriend raised his hand, intending to slap her back. At that moment, Him-chan immediately stepped in and interrupted the situation. He firmly stated that it was not acceptable to hit a woman simply out of anger. His intention was to stop the situation from escalating further. However, instead of calming down, the boyfriend redirected his aggression toward Him-chan and began to physically attack him. This led to a fight between the two men. After some time of struggle, Him-chan managed to overpower the boyfriend, who eventually ended up on the ground. Standing over him, Him-chan remarked that the man would get up on his own eventually, and there was no further need to intervene. With that, he prepared to leave. As he was about to walk away, the woman stopped him for a brief moment. Him-chan turned toward her and told her to stop getting involved in unnecessary situations and to go home, warning her that staying there could lead to her getting hurt. The woman thanked him for stepping in and helping her. Him-chan responded briefly that he was going to leave now, and then departed. She remained standing there, watching him leave, and silently thought that he seemed like a very strange person. On the other hand, Him-chan later found himself at Mihi's house. Even while being there, he was mentally distracted and found himself missing Jumi. After assisting Mihi with her exercise session, he asked her if she was finished. Mihi responded that she was not done yet and instructed him to wait a little longer. Him-chan replied that there was not much time remaining before the session would normally end. However, Mihi insisted that she was about to start preparing a new lookbook and told him that he could wait a bit longer so that he could also watch the tutorial. Mihi appeared in front of Him-chan wearing a new outfit for her lookbook, which immediately caught him off guard and left him visibly surprised. He had not expected her to present herself in that manner, and for a brief moment, he struggled to react normally. Noticing his expression, Mihi asked him for his opinion, expecting him to comment on the look and overall presentation. She then continued speaking in an encouraging tone, saying that it was something simple and not complicated, and asked him to follow her instructions properly. She suggested that he should try to observe carefully and get into the flow of what she was doing. After a short pause, Him-chan agreed to help her. Mihi then asked him to close the door of the room. She reassured him that nothing unusual was happening, explaining that she was simply going to film herself while remaining in her outfit and recording content for her lookbook. She added that she could use his assistance to manage the recording process properly and specifically asked him to check whether the camera was functioning well and capturing everything correctly. Him-chan agreed and took responsibility for the camera setup. After that, Mihi began recording her video tutorial. Him-chan stood holding the camera, carefully focusing on adjusting angles and making sure the framing looked appropriate for the recording. As she moved through the session, she changed into different outfits as part of her tutorial, while Him-chan continued to assist her by monitoring the camera and ensuring the shots were being captured properly and clearly. As the session progressed, Him-chan gradually started feeling increasingly uncomfortable. He became aware of his own reactions and felt embarrassed when he noticed that he appeared unusually excited and awkward in that situation. Realizing this, he quickly apologized, explaining that there had been a misunderstanding. He then said that he needed to leave immediately because he had to attend his next class. Mihi responded by saying that it was okay and attempted to stop him from leaving, but Him-chan did not stay and quickly left the room.